conscience for the speaker that we have for tonight. I want to say that all the speakers we listened to were great. All of them. And we had the pleasure of selecting tonight's speaker as a result of the conscience. But we got somebody special to introduce that person. So I'd like for that person to come up now, please.
I'm going to be short because it's time to go. I'm an addict. My name is Sheila. And it's an honor. This was a surprise to introduce this addict who is very dear to me, who is my friend, who is my husband. And I love him dearly. And it's late. And without further ado, I will give you my loving husband, Bill J.
I'm an addict. My name is Bill. Thank God I'm alive and clean in another Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Once again, I'm just grateful for that. I want to thank the ISNAC Convention Committee, the Programming Committee for selecting me. I want to thank God for allowing me to stay clean another day. Whenever I get asked to speak somewhere, when I'm thinking about it, what it does is help me stay clean to that point. Because when you're asked to go somewhere and share, you can't use it, else you ain't going to be able to share. So, all these things help me stay clean just another day. Newcomer's the most important person at any meeting because we can only keep what we have by giving it away. What do we have? We have a message. Our message is, as written in our literature, Tradition 5, an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. That's it. Now I'm going to share a little bit, I'm going to share about me and how I got to this point of standing here today. I was born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I want to thank all my brothers and sisters from Cincinnati who came out to support me. There's a lot of love there. And in my story, you'll hear more about this love of the fellowship, for real. I don't discount that or play that down because I can't do this alone. Not only in Cincinnati, but everywhere I go. But that's where I got clean at, in Cincinnati. I was born and raised in Cincinnati. I started using and just went crazy and wound up being put out the city at the age of about 12 or 13 instead of going to what was considered the Department of Youth Services because I was in so much trouble. I went to an academic school, college preparatory school, never fit in. Came back to Cincinnati after being out of town for a year, graduated from high school, got an impulse of thought like I used to do. I was cutting my grass one day, cutting my mama's lawn, and the guy walked past at the age of 17, and I knew I was headed for prison because I was already getting loaded on heroin by then. So he said, let's go on the service, let's go on the Marine Corps. I said, okay, cool. I'm cutting grass, and I make a decision, a life-changing decision, like, okay, let's go on the service. So one of the guys I sponsor happened to go for that trick too. I told him let's go on the service, and he wound up saying okay too. So it was about 4 or 5 of us went in the Marine Corps back then. I stayed in the Marine Corps for about 3 years as a meteorologist because I didn't like weapons. They threw me out. It was embarrassing. I got caught up in a county jail in Beaufort, South Carolina because I was using dope and stealing, and I got a case and they had me in jail. They gave me undesirable discharge. The only way I learned how to talk about this was coming to Narcotics Anonymous because prior to coming here I always told a lie that I had a general or honorable discharge. They threw my ass out. I'm going to try not to. Mike has said something. I'm going to try not to curse too much. Please forgive me if I slip. I'm going to try to tone that down because I do a lot of vulgarity stuff, and I don't mean to offend anybody. I appreciate y'all inviting me to come here, so I'm going to try to respect that best I can. Please, God help me. So anyhow, I got out the service, ODing over and over again, and coming back home. I left Cincinnati, going to the Marine Corps, and got on a jet and went to San Diego, MCRD San Diego. I flew out there on a jet and I was flying around, and my last base where I was stationed at was in Beaufort, South Carolina, and I flew down there on a plane, and I thought my life was coming up. But by the time I left Beaufort, South Carolina, I had been thrown out the service. They took my duffel bag and wouldn't let me come back on base. They said, no, you wait right here. They went and got my duffel bag and threw it over the fence. Now that's some humiliating stuff. But that's what addicts go through, whether you realize it or not. I deal with humiliation. I've dealt with it for so long that I thought it was a part of my life, a way of life. This is what's going to happen, so just get accustomed to it. Everything you do going to come out wrong. So anyhow, I came back home on a Greyhound bus and swore my life was going to be different. I probably lasted a half a day and I was back to getting loaded. Probably 2 years later, I did my first bit in the penitentiary. About 18 months later, I wound up in the prison again after I got out. My first biological son, this was 1977. He was born, I was in London Correctional Institute, which is a penitentiary in the state of Ohio. The day he was born, that was my first day down there. I swore to myself then that when I got out, I was going to tighten up my hand, no longer use drugs. I was going to be a loving father and, all that old stuff. About 3 months later, I was sitting on a bunk in London Correctional Institute, which is just a dormitory with beds everywhere. And I'm sitting on a bunk shooting dope. And I'm in jail already. And it's an open area. And there's guards all around. And I'm sitting on a bunk shooting dope. And using to live and living to use. Regardless of where I went, I couldn't stop. So I come home and I swore I wasn't going to do it no more. I prayed in the penitentiary that I would get a job. God blessed me with a job. In 1978, I started working at a hospital as a wheelchair pusher. I always wanted to push something. 24 years later, by the grace of God, I still have that job because I was still using when I got that job. I went through 12 years of being on methadone, shooting dope, shooting cocaine, taking whatever else came along. Back in 1988, I thought I had reached my bottom. I went to treatment. In August of 88, I got out of treatment. I went to an AA meeting. A lady in there who I knew, she knew me from the streets. When I walked in the meeting, she said, they got an NA meeting right down the street. God will prepare you for what's coming up long before you know it's coming up. I started going to NA meetings, and I didn't want to surrender. That statement about alcohol as a drug, I didn't want to accept that. I didn't want to accept the fact that I was an addict after being in Narcotics Anonymous. Going to meetings for about 30 days, I decided to drink some beer. The beer progressed to shooting dope again in about 2 days. I started coming to believe that what was said in the literature was true. I still didn't want to be here. I was hoping that you all wouldn't accept me back and say, you stupid so-and-so, I told you was going to use, you ain't got no business. Nobody did that. They reached out to me with loving arms and said, keep coming. I stayed clean about another 30 days, used again. I was married at the time. She and I used together. I came back, stayed clean another 6-7 months. Split, me and the lady that I was married to got separated. I used again, she didn't. She has 14 years clean now, that's why I got 13 and she got 14. I came back and I surrendered. And I said, whatever y'all want me to do, I will do it. Now here's how I got to the point of surrender, and this is about carrying the message to the addict still suffers. I used on May around the 12th or 13th. My clean day is May the 15th, 1989. So I got 13 years by the grace of God and some months. Now, 2 or 3 days prior to my clean day, I used, and a lady that I was married to went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, right? She went to the meeting on that Sunday and started crying, saying, he done used again, what am I going to do? Well, it was 4 addicts in that meeting that decided to leave that meeting and come carry the message to me. Now, I'm loaded, I'm out my mind. But here's what happened, man. It was 4 guys in my area, in the area I come from. There was one guy, he looked like he was out of Texas. They called him Tex. There was another guy, he looked like he had been on a mountain meditating or something. There was another guy who was a big old husky guy that I had been in a therapeutic community with, who I knew that he had come home from the penitentiary and got into a therapeutic community. And the 4th guy was a little small guy, Jewish guy, who I knew from the methadone clinic. Now, I don't remember, and I don't even try to, I don't remember whatever they came to my house and said on that Sunday night, which was on May the 14th, whatever they said, I have not a clue. What I did know, For them 4 guys to be together, come to see after me, maybe, just maybe, God was trying to tell me something. Because they weren't supposed to be together. Them 4 different lifestyles was never supposed to be together, let me tell you. So anyhow, I came back and I surrendered and I hooked up with my brother over there, Danny. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. We've been in recovery together, and he's guided me and all the rest of the people. But that was one of the first people that was instrumental, and my sponsor. The way I got a sponsor was the guy walked up to me after seeing me coming in and out, and we had used together, me and the guy that sponsored me, and we had gotten arguments about drugs, wanting to kill each other, you know. You owe me, you don't pay me now, I'm sick, I ain't giving you nothing, you know, that kind of stuff. Anyhow, the guy walked up to me and said, I'm going to be your sponsor and you better not use, right? And he's been my sponsor ever since. That's been 13 years ago. I wasn't ready to argue about nothing no more. I was defeated, man. I was desperate. I was hopeless. I was useless. I felt like jumping off bridges. I didn't think I could get this. People in Narcotics Anonymous, as it says in the literature, insisted that I could get it. I just didn't believe it, but I kept coming. Danny, the guy told me something. He said, Bill, if you keep coming back, something will hit you. I don't know what, and I don't know when. And I thought he was lying. I'm like, he's full of it. I ain't listening to him. Well, anyhow, somewhere down the road, 30 days, 60, I don't know when it was. Something hit me. I don't know what it was, and I don't know when. But I ain't had to use since then. The obsession and the compulsion is gone. That's the real miracle of Narcotics Anonymous is described to our literature. The real miracle, as described in the basic text, is when we realize that the obsession and the compulsion to use has been lifted. That's the real miracle. All the rest is just a continuation of it. Because for real, when I was using, when I was out there and couldn't go home, and I got the check and spent the check and swore I wasn't going to spend it and couldn't go home, all I wanted was just to have one day of peace without using dope and having that, without being driven to use dope. And when I got to Narcotics Anonymous, I realized my gift, my wish had been granted. So now everything, I try to keep an attitude that everything I do in Narcotics Anonymous, it ain't because I'm going to get something later on. I already got what I asked for, man. For real. My mama kept insurance on me probably till I was 25, 30 years old because she knew I was going to die. So when literature says against all odds, right? This is what this program, Against All Odds. My mama was even betting I probably wouldn't make it till I was 25 or 30 because of the lifestyle I was living. I can't blame her for doing that. Hell, I'd take out insurance on me too today if I was doing the stuff I was doing back then. But, you know, after all the ODs and taking people's dope and having pistols up to your head and going to penitentiaries and coming home and swearing you ain't going to do it again and putting 2-3 kind of dopes in a cooker and talking about your speedballing and twisting your heart up all different kind of ways, you're supposed to be dead, man. So it's only by the grace of God I stand here. You know, when I look at my using, I know it ain't nothing that I did to get me to this point. And I've heard other addicts share this weekend. I ain't no different than the person out there on the corner using now. I don't know what happened. I just got tired. And when I came to recovery, when I started coming back to meetings after May the 15th, and they started reading, I think it's the third tradition, talk about the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using, and I kept sitting in meetings feeling guilty because I didn't think I had that desire, and I raised my hand, and sharing the meetings was real small back then. So I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do this because I don't feel that, right? And they told me to keep coming. What I came to understand, looking back, was at that time, even though I still had a desire to use, I also had a desire not to use. The desire to use at that time was stronger than the desire not to use. But as I kept coming back and allowing the program, God, and the fellowship to work on me, the desire to use started to lessen, and the desire not to use got greater. All right? That's the way I look at it. So anyhow, over the years I've been clean. I've been in service work. I've been on convention committees. God, I don't know how many times. I've been the treasurer twice. They swore up and down we stole the money this year, kept it in our pocket. But they got more money in the area than I probably ever had after a convention. But I got to accept that because when you become a trusted servant, what you do is serve the fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. And when you serve them, you take on whatever they say to, and you continue to serve them and do the job that you're supposed to do. Integrity is consistent application of spiritual principles as described in our It Works How and Why under one of them traditions. So regardless of what I think I ought to do and how I think they should be grateful for what I've done, I still got to try to do the right thing. This is not because, man, can you imagine an addict who would steal from their mama and you running around with $13,000 cash because y'all trust me? So they got to be crazy. Not Nair and penny was not accounted for. Every penny was accounted for. This time the last time I was treasurer. But I learned that through being around people in the program and getting involved in service and being in the at the area level and being involved. I love the convention. Now, at one of the first functions I went to share the story about the basic text. After, I told you I came around 30 days and used, came around 30 days and used, and somewhere in between there we had a function in Cincinnati. I already had a basic text, right? And I went to this function, and because I had probably 2-3 days at the time of the function. So, they said, everybody in 2-3 days, come on up, we get a book. So I came up front and I say, they gave me a hug and they wanted to hand me a book, and in my arrogance I said, I already got a book. And the guy, because I only had 2-3 days, he said, well, maybe you need 2 books. It made sense. I still got them 2 books. I keep a book at home and a book at work. So I started doing things, and my life got better, and me and my wife, me and the lady that I'm married to, we got hooked up. We stayed together for 8 years prior to getting married. We had to make sure we really wanted to do this. So anyhow, I'm going to bring you all the way up to last year, because I'm going to make this quick and just share with you that no matter what happened and what you're going through, what you think you might be going through, whether you know what your feelings are, whether you're real deep into the steps. Let me go on them steps for a minute first, though, because I always want to talk about a little bit about spiritual principles. It ain't all the time that I sit around and just talk about principles and living a new way of life. It's about just doing it, all right? It's about just doing it. The first step is about acknowledging who I am and what I suffer from, and surrendering to that, and realizing my life is unmanageable, and applying such principles as honesty, acceptance, and surrender, and humility in the first step. Humility is a result of getting honest with ourselves, as it says in the basic text. So when I get honest with myself and accept the fact that I'm powerless over the disease of addiction, that my life had become unmanageable, then I recognize who I am and what I can and can't do. I cannot go around all my old partners who used to sell dope. I can't do it. I had sons that sold dope. I couldn't go around them. All right? I can't do it, man. The second step is about being restored to sanity. And what I started coming to understand about that step, come to means to move towards, as described in the dictionary. Because I not only read the literature, I was taught to go to a dictionary and ask other people who had experience with it and try to incorporate it in your life. All right? So come to means to move towards. But wait a minute, the word restore means to bring back. So if I'm trying to be restored to sanity, what that implies is that once upon a time, whether it was just the first day I was born and I got smacked on my rump, somewhere down the line I had some soundness of mind. All right? So the second step was about hope, faith, and one of my sponsees just pointed out to me, trust, because I used to believe for a long time trust didn't come along to the third step, but he showed me, and it works out with that step study guide where the word trust is used, the principle of trust. Principles mean law. That's all in the dictionary. That's what principle means, law. Spiritual is a word that comes from a Greek or Latin word means spiri, which means to breathe life into. So if I'm talking about spiritual principles, I'm talking about laws that breathe life back into us. All right? So when I apply the principles, spiritual principles, life is being given back to me through breath. Something I can't touch or feel. Not feel, but touch, put my hand on. I can't see it. The third step was we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to care of God. I heard a guy from New Orleans back in 1989 share about that, and what it was about was just trusting and making a commitment and surrender to work the other 9 steps. Right? That's all it was. After gathering up a whole lot of information about the third step and trying to figure out whether I was making a decision and what action the decision was based on and all that other stuff, what it really came down to for me was, you've been clean long enough to work the first 2 steps. You're on the third step. You see that the program of Narcotics Anonymous works. The question becomes, what are you going to do now? Work the other 9 steps. Evidently, I got evidence that the program works. I've been clean for a while. The obsession and the compulsion to use has been lifted. I had no problem with writing because I wrote in the penitentiary all the time because I never got letters. Nobody visited me. They said they was coming. I just didn't get there. So by the time I got to Narcotics Anonymous, I didn't have no problem with writing. And the way I framed it in my mind was, if somebody in my active addiction, and I believe active addiction only comes about if I use drugs. I don't believe I'm in active addiction without drugs. I believe my disease is active without the use of drugs, but the only way to return to active addiction is not to take that first drug. The only way not to return to active addiction is not to take that first drug. So I can't be in active addiction if I ain't using. Now, my disease is active, and that's because of the obsession and compulsion and self-centeredness of the disease, the three components of the disease of addiction, right? The obsession, the fixed idea, the compulsion, once I start, I can't stop like I'm doing right now. I'm running like I'm selling a car or something. What am I doing? The first thing we do is stop. You see that in literature? There's a whole lot of places in literature that says the first thing we do is stop. You know what, I'm going to go somewhere else with this. I was in a meeting the other night and they was talking about the chapter, I think it was More Will Be Revealed. And what came to my mind at that moment was, now I've been clean for 13 years by the grace of God, what came to mind was that at each one of these chapters, if I look with my spirit, I can see spiritual principles just in the title of the chapter. Think about it. Who is an addict? Me. Spiritual principle honesty come to me right away. More will be revealed. Think about it. Open-mindedness and hope comes to mind right away. You say, whoa! I also come to realize after being around and trying to apply these things in my life that sometimes you can see these principles when they ain't written down. You start to understand the stuff a little bit and see it. Understand I got a long way to go and I ain't trying to go nowhere. This is the best place I've ever been in my life. I ain't got no whole lot. I ain't looking for no whole lot. Once again, I tell you, I'm just grateful I ain't using. You know them Saturday nights when you're out using all night long, Sunday morning come around and the people driving by and their cars going to church and they looking all dressed up and you greasy and your gym shoes got holes in them. It's raining outside and you wish you was anywhere but where you was at and you pray for the day when you ain't there and then finally you wound up here. This is the day I prayed for. I got to come back up to 2002, and that was a good and bad year for me. Me and my wife, we got married in May of 2002. Prior to that, my oldest sister, who I established a relationship since I got clean. We didn't have that when I was using. Don't say nothing to me, I don't say nothing to you, some of that stuff. But because of this program, we reestablished a connection 13 years ago. We had a working relationship. That's another word that I don't hear a whole lot when we talk about relationships, because I believe a relationship is only a connection. But the question becomes, is the connection working? All right? So me and my sister had a working relationship. We respected one another. We loved one another. She passed away right before our wedding. I think it was around March or April. So I said, damn, this is on the downswing with me and my baby getting married, and we're coming back up. So May came around, we got married, and somehow we wound up in Hawaii. Now I'm an addict, man, that couldn't get off the corner. And I really didn't know, I'm still today baffled how I wound up in Hawaii. I ain't got no money. You know what I'm saying? That's a long way from Cincinnati. So anyhow, we got married in May. Now let me back up a little bit more. I had three sons by the lady I was married to, and then the story on that, I think that tape that y'all listened to was about my fictive son or my extended son. Me and my sister bought a house, and a guy knocked on my door one day, and he said, it was on Sunday morning. I got up, my wife was in the other room. He said, hi, how you doing? I said, hi, you, who is you? He said, you don't know who I am? I said, no. He said, I'm gonna bring your grandchildren on. I said, hold it, man, what's going on? He said, I'm your son. And he got to telling me the story. Now, I did date his mama before I went in the Marine Corps. This was back in '68, right? She got pregnant by some other guy, and I guess she felt as though for whatever reason she wanted to tell this guy he was my son. But I knew the story about his father. His father was also caught up in active addiction, but he didn't make it to the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. He went on one of them things. You know when you was in the streets, you see guys, and you say they on a death mission, they have to kill themselves or somebody. Well, he got killed. Police killed him. He was walking across the street with a pistol. Police had put the pistol down. He turned around, pulled it up, and the guy killed him. So anyhow, I told this young man the story about his daddy. But he had been hearing things about me in the neighborhood. You dig what I'm saying? From where? Because I'm back in the neighborhood where I was raised. But I ain't the low-down, dirty, through dope fiend that I used to be. You dig what I'm saying? I'm going in and out the house. I ain't copping. I ain't stealing nothing. I ain't selling nothing hot. I ain't trying to buy nothing. I ain't doing none of that stuff. So he said, yeah, I hear you a counselor now, because evidently somebody told him I was going to Narcotics Anonymous, and a lot of people, if they ain't familiar with this, they think you become a counselor when you go. I'm not no counselor. I push wheelchairs. God will put you where you're supposed to be, too. All right? So I told him, I said, no, I ain't your daddy. Go talk to your uncle. He can give you the story. He said, he looked at me and he said, I don't care what you say, you're still going to be my daddy. Me and him got a working relationship today. This child is considered my grandson. Stays upstairs with my sister all the time. So anyhow, I started taking all these young men back and forth to New York, right? I took my second oldest biological son. A friend of mine is in recovery, lives in Washington, D.C. He moved in Cincinnati, Washington, D.C. He had graduated from Howard University. My second oldest son, biological son, was selling dope. I wanted to try so hard to show him another avenue to live, right? So I told the guy, I said, dig, man, I'm coming up to D.C. I'm bringing my son. I want you to take him over on that campus. He was about 19 years old then. 19 or 20. I want you to take him over on campus and let him get exposed to the campus, right? See young ladies and see guys with books in their hand rather than standing in the corner shooting dice and drinking wine and flipping that stuff. So I took him up there and he got his nose open to it. Now I ain't only just trying to push him through. My wife went back to school and got a GED, then she got an associate's degree, then she got a bachelor's degree, right? Now, I'm all time in competition with my wife. Yeah, you know, we'd be in the car and she turned the heat up, and then my thing is to turn it down a notch, or she turned the radio up and then I got to turn it down. You know, I don't know why. I guess it's obsession, compulsion, and self-centeredness. So anyhow, I went back to school, trying to keep up with her, and messed around and got an associate's degree, right? Now in Cincinnati, they have a cultural graduation ceremony. It's called Tahimba, right? So I'm getting my associate's degree. It's this big old ceremony, and it's real lively, real high-spirited kind of thing, right? A whole lot of drums and music and dancing and you know, all that old stuff. So I invited my sons, right? I invited all of them. They all came, all my biological sons. Well, my second oldest son, the one I took up to Howard University, he never did say much. He said, Daddy, you think I'd be able to do that? I said, yeah, take your butt back to school and get on over here and you'll be able to do it too. So now, he's selling dope, but he got into a 2-year junior college. Now he's selling dope in the daytime. He's taking 2 classes at night. You dig what I'm saying? I'm like, well, that's the way you got to do it. So I'm riding past the strip, not very often. I just go through there every now and then to check on him, let him know I love him. He got lots of money. I'm taking them up to New York. They don't spend no money. I'm one of them kind of guys. They don't spend no money when they with me. I'm one of them kind of guys that I'm not going to encourage you to continue doing something to kill somebody else. I'm not going to accept something from you under the guise that it's all right because I need it, but I know you're doing wrong. Because I was taught if I tell you a lie, I'm telling myself a lie. So I take them up there. I pay for the whole trip. If they want to spend their money, they spend it. Well, anyhow, real quickly, last August, on the 28th of August, he got killed. His mama called me 3 o'clock in the morning and said they can't get a heartbeat. Now, I told you I work in a hospital. They took him last time, when I saw my son dead, I was back at the hospital where I work in the emergency unit. He was laying there dead. One of his eyes was left open, the other one was closed. I said, can't y'all close his eye? And there was a feeling that came over me in my gut, man, that I couldn't do nothing about it. Nothing. I was in a daze. Now here's the love of the fellowship. It wasn't a half an hour later Danny was there. 45 minutes later Sheila was there. Now, this kid was raised in recovery, man. Almost the whole fellowship in Cincinnati know him. In between me and Sheila and his biological mama, it wasn't too many people he missed. So my faith got shaken at that point. And what held me up was the love of the fellowship. It wasn't about me. Don't underestimate the love of this fellowship. I often talk about don't count nobody out here. You know what I'm saying? Don't get mad at people and cuss them out and push them out your life or threaten them or none of that, because you don't know when you're going to need them. They carried me through. I ain't over that one yet. Now, the same hospital that I work in, I had to go back in every morning past the emergency unit where I last saw my son laying there dead. Kurt said you got to walk through your fears regardless. I got to go to work, so I started praying. Now, I've come to understand, too, from doing some other stuff, trying to stay centered with this recovery thing and trying to regain some faith and get away from this wavering of faith that it hit me, man. I started reading some stuff on grieving and, some of them things. I don't even remember them all. I think one is denial, and then there's anger, and then there's bargaining, and then there's acceptance, and there's another one. I don't remember what it is. But anyhow, I realized that I got to go back to work right after the funeral was over and everybody helped out. And I didn't even have time to think about using, man. Using wasn't on my mind. It was like, what in the hell just happened? And God, why did this happen to us? Even in death, self-centeredness will come in. Even in death, the disease will try to play with me. It'll try to work on me. Push me away from people, have me arguing at people that's close to me, being angry at God. So anyhow, I kept trying to bargain with God. God, just give me a sign that he all right. Because people, when he first passed away, they said, is there anything I can do? I said, yeah, pray for his soul. Now, I taught all my sons from the time they was little some basic words that I believe in. I always, it's called like a call and response. I've been to college for a couple of weeks, and in some cultural and music classes, they have a thing known as call and response. One person call out and the other person responds. That's what a call and response is, and that happens in music. So I instilled in all my sons, I would say to them, remember what the Lord will do. And I'm not trying to get religious. This is just something I do. And their response to that call would be, the Lord will make a way out of no way. Now, the next one I would give to them was, remember the 4 magic words. And their response to that will always be, please, God, help me. All right? Now, I'm saying that to say that my son got shot in his, I think they call it the femoral artery or something, and he bled to death right on the street where he was selling dope at. He kept them knots of money in his pocket, and I kept telling him to stop doing that. That's something else I've learned too. Even though it was my son and I was grieving, I was angry at him for dying, man. I had to write about that, and quickly. So I envisioned in my head at that moment that he had got shot and was falling to the ground, that he remembered those 4 magic words. Please, God, help me. They worked for me. I'm still standing here. So I was bargaining with God for, God, please give me a sign. Let me know you're all right. Please, please, please. So I'm walking back in and forth to work every morning. And I cut through the emergency unit most of the time to get to the time clock so I can go upstairs to the rehab department to do my duties in the physical therapy department. I started ducking it for a couple of days when I got back to work because I couldn't face reality like that. I started going around back entrances and stuff. So I finally I prayed one morning. I said, I'm going to go through this. I got to go through eventually. I got to cut through the emergency room. They're going to send me over there for something. So anyhow, that morning, weird as it may seem, and I ain't heard this shit, and I ain't heard this since then, man. When I walked in the door, my son's name was Kevin. When I walked in that door that morning after praying in the emergency unit where people walk in to get registered at, over the loudspeaker came a voice, and it said, Kevin Johnson, report to register to admissions, is what it said. I'm like, damn, wait a minute, I ain't heard this one before. So that was my sign, and even it might sound tripped out to y'all, but that was my sign that my son, who is God's son, has been admitted to where it is he was supposed to be admitted. Now, through this all, I had already been prepared through our literature for something like this. Now, what I came to find out over the years, that in this basic text there are 2 books. Y'all know that, no? There's 2 books in here. Book 1 and book 2, right? Okay, in book 2 of the basic text, the first story in the personal stories of the second book is a gift called life. And in that story, there's a statement that says, now I know everything I have is only borrowed from God. All right? So that gives me some comfort and relief in the fact that God only let me borrow that boy for a while. Wasn't my child. God just put him in my custody. Somewhere else in there, and I dig this one, somewhere else in this literature, I forget exactly where it was, it says, no matter how painful life tragedies might be, We must not use, no matter what it is. So I share with people, and I joke a lot in meetings at home. I joke with people, especially people who struggling with staying clean and just come around. I try to hit them with some rules when they first hit the door. And they look at me like, rules? I said, yeah, man, I'm getting ready to give you all the rules of the game. Yeah, I'm going to give them to you, man. Be cool. So I sit down with them and I said, dig, here's rule number one. No matter what, don't use. So you got that? I said, yeah, I got that. So, okay, now I'm going to hit you with rule 999. No matter what, don't use. Right? So now, here's the test. You tell me what rule 9,999 is. And they say, no matter what, don't use. I said, you got it, let's do it. So I didn't want to go on real long. I was anxious about this. I've come to realize through the steps that I can have mixed emotions. I can have joy and sadness going on at the same time. There used to be a time when I thought that these opposite or feelings that kind of contrasted each other couldn't exist at the same time, but I come to understand that they can. I was anxious and happy and joyful about doing this, and I was also fearful and wanting to get it over, and because this is an honor to do something like this, for real. I dreamt of doing this probably the first 4 or 5 years I was clean, and then I got to the point of the first step, I guess it was, and surrendered to the fact that I wasn't going to be no speaker at a meeting like this. I don't like to use terms like main speaker and spiritual speaker, and I got to get with that because that's what we do. But I think all speakers are speakers regardless of where you speak at. And I don't think one is more main than the other, and I don't think one is more spiritual than the other. But that's my issue, and I'll get with it one day, hopefully. So I surrendered that thing about trying to be a speaker at a banquet, any of that stuff. And the guy, Mike, called me. And I was in gloom and doom back then, man. Once again, God has set you up. He had already got the road prepared. Because I was laying in the bed when he called, and it's like, where you get my name from, man? I don't send out no tapes. I don't do a lot of talking when I come to conventions anymore. I just sit around and listen. I just got back from down in Hilton Head, South Carolina, 2 weeks ago at a convention. I didn't speak in there meeting. I don't go to the marathons no more and try to share my butt off or nothing or give you my best worst story anymore, because it ain't necessary. I try to sit around and be of service, and you can pick out shots in here too. You can look around and see you can start checking out who's in pain or who's in sorrow or who looks like they're a little bit confused. And you can go on up to them and just say, hi, can I have a hug? You ain't got to know what they're doing or why they're doing it. So that's the kind of stuff I do. Somebody today shared about being a soldier and recovering, and I just consider myself just a foot soldier. I ain't trying to aspire to great heights or nothing. Once again, man, I've already been blessed with everything I wanted in life, and that was to stop using dope. If you go 25, 30 years of constant drug use, man, and your life feeling miserable and you're hating yourself all the time, you keep on poking holes in your arm, that's that self-loathing, all right, in the physical sense. Self-loathing is a detestation of oneself as described through the dictionary I looked in. I had to hate myself to be sitting around poking holes in my arm. People who love themselves don't put poison in their body. I used to wonder, you can't talk to me like that. Why not? You do more than that to yourself. I'm going to finish up in 5 minutes. Because that'll be 10 o'clock, because I know how these things go. I've been involved in a lot of conventions, and I know how they go, man. People want to get involved in a whole lot of other things. And I guess I'm getting a little less self-centered as time goes on. I was looking at the 8th step, and let me just share. Even after reading this literature over and over again, the stuff started popping out that you looked at 1,000 times, but you didn't know it was there. It didn't make no sense to you then, but now it makes sense. Now, I read the daily meditation almost every day. As a matter of fact, we done hooked up a phone line at home, right? You got that phone system now where you can have group list, right? And you put a bunch of addicts in there, and that can be group 11 or group 12, and you can make one phone call, and you can leave a message with about 15, 20 people without even actually hearing them say hello, how you doing, or nothing, right, through the system. So we got that at home. And what happens every morning, Kitty is doing it now. What she does is call and gives everybody a message about the daily meditation. She got 7 days to do it, and we ask her to make her messages short. People don't like to listen to long messages. But anyhow, what we do is say what the daily meditation is, read the bottom of it, say what page it come off of, and oftentimes go to that page and pick something out and ask a question about it. It goes out to about 15, 16 people. The first one call back with the answer. That message, that answer gets passed back on to the 15, 16 people, and you're through with it for the day. What that does is not only encourage us to look at our literature, but it gives us some information that we might be missing over. All right? Now, dig this. Now, this is fascinating. Y'all probably, a lot of y'all, if not all of y'all, probably know this already, but this was fascinating to me when I read it. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This is the 8th step, right? And that's a step about making a list and becoming willing. Make the list and become willing, right? So I made the list and I became willing. Now the 9th step said, and here's the way the guy that sponsored me gave me the 9th step. He said, because I kept on saying, we may direct amends whenever possible. And he said, hold it right there. So what are you talking about? He said, don't say whatever, say whenever. I'm like, okay, so what? I pronounced the word. He said, now let me explain that to you. In essence, that's what he said. And he said, wherever means God will provide the time and the place. You come up with the willingness, right? And I've had situations in my life when I thought it was time to make a 9th step, to make amends to somebody, and I just knew I needed to do something, man. It wasn't like I needed to go to a corner and pray and ponder and try to check in with 18 people. I just knew, right? There was a guy in active addiction who, I stole all his dope, right? He called himself giving me dope to sell, and he was going to just give me enough to shoot, but not give me any money. Well, he called a case and he left his keys with me and 2 other guys. Stupid guy. I don't know why he did that. But while he was in jail overnight, we took all his stuff, man. So when he got out, he came looking for me. He put a pistol up to my head, took me for a ride somewhere, and I broke and ran into another guy's house, and years went by and I didn't see him no more. And then I start seeing him back up to the hospital. It was a different tone going on then. His rump was out. His family was falling apart. He didn't have no money. His back was out. He kept telling me about the sadness in his life. Now, by then, I'm playing about 6, 7 years. And I was just moved to not no whole lot of money. I think I gave that brother $20, man. He was getting ready to try to leave out the parking lot. I ran downstairs to him, and he ain't in recovery. I ran up to him, I said, man, please forgive me for what I've done. And tried to give him the $20. He took the $20, but what he said to me was amazing to me. He said, no, my brother, please forgive me for what I've done. At that point, I knew that I could be reconnected to humanity. All right? I knew there was some freedom in store for me. Now dig this. This is the 8th step. This is about freedom in the future, right? What we do now can give us some freedom in the future. This is the second to last paragraph on page 38. The 8th step offers a big change from a life dominated by guilt and remorse. Now my life I've been used to a life dominated by guilt and remorse. Look down the street, see somebody, it looked like I might have done something to him, I got to go the other way. Come to find out it wasn't even them, but I done went through 18,000 changes because I can't take no chances the dirty stuff I done done. Now, check out the next sentence. This is what hit me the other day, and it was in Daily Meditation, page 38. Our futures are changed. The 8th step changes our future, man. And this is why it does that. Because we don't have to avoid those who we have harmed. So that's a message of hope. Like, wait a minute, man. If I do this stuff now, my future be changed. Let me show you something else in the 8th step. 8th step is happy, man. Immediate gratification, right? That's what I like. Want what I want when I want it, right? Dig what the 8th step say. The 8th step is an action step. Now check this out. Like all the steps, not just 8th step, not 10th step. It says like all the steps. It offers immediate benefits. Whoa! Immediate benefits from working any of the steps? Now, I used to think of immediate benefits as something that I can see, I can understand, I can recognize. But with this program here, man, I can have the benefits and not realize I got them till later on. You know how the obsession and compulsion was lifted, and you didn't know it was lifted till probably days later? You already had the benefit, you just didn't know it. Spiritual awakening, waking up, becoming conscious, whatever you want to call it. So it's a reason for me doing all this, man. You know, I'm just so happy to be clean, man. You know, the only time I couldn't go out of town when I was shooting dope and drinking methadone, because before you could go out of town, you had to check in with the methadone clinic and get your drink transferred somewhere else so that when you got there, you wouldn't be sick, right? You couldn't go out of town when you was on parole, because if your parole officer found out you got a ticket in another city, you was going to be violated, right? I ain't got to worry about none of that stuff no more. Listen, if I get a car, I don't get a car. I don't care, man. I can still walk. I ain't got to dump people no more. I said I was going to be quiet, and I told a lie, didn't I? I didn't cuss too much tonight because I'm trying to practice respect, and I keep hearing people talk about cursing, and hopefully I can tone it down. Man, it's so hard for me to stop cursing. I don't know why. It ain't like I'm not articulate. It's not like I can't effectively communicate with other individuals. I just do it, man. I don't get no hassles in Cincinnati in the area, man. I just try to be of service. You know, one year I was the arts and graphics chairperson, and that's the person who creates the design and puts together that book in Cincinnati, right? The format, the program itself in the book. And no matter what I did, somebody had a complaint, right? You know what I'm saying? You're going to deal with that. That's what happens when you step up and become trusted servant. When you become a leader, you lead by example, right? I was programming chairperson one year, and a young guy in recovery, he got 13 years now, but back then he said, Bill, you left out our youth in recovery. I'm like, hey, we done the best we could. Give us a break, man. You know, I wanted to feel hurt about that, but that was important to him at the time. But I started to understand when you serve in this fellowship, man, that comes with the territory. I've learned how to be committed and follow things through, persevere. Prudence is a spiritual principle found in the traditions. It can be found in our steps too, for real. And what prudence is to me is just using my resources wisely. You dig what I'm saying? Not going over, you know, we always talk about a prudent reserve. What is that? Have you ever checked it out? What does that mean? Are you using your resources wisely? What is your reserve? How wise is your reserve? And that's not, oh, here, dig this one about keep coming back. Now, 2 weeks ago, I was in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and that was my 4th trip down there since I've been clean. And I was standing on the ocean. You know, you guys, some of y'all probably heard that poem about footsteps in the sand. So I'm dealing with, this is my first year back down there since my son got killed, and they never did catch the guy who done it, and I'm still struggling with that one, man. Because they shot him, and then his little partner, they took him, drove him off somewhere, shot and killed him, broke in my son's house, stole his jerseys and video games or something, took my son's truck. The other little boy wasn't found for 2-3 days. By the time they found him, because it's August, he was a little thin guy, his body was decomposed in the woods. I said, man, these guys is off the hook. They gone, man. They don't have no kind of morals anymore. So I'm in South Carolina, and I get up early Saturday morning and go down on the beach before anybody come up. And I see this one set of footprints in the sand, and I reflected on that one. I kept wondering, why I keep coming back to this Hilton Head place? Why I keep coming back here? It was just to let me know that God still carrying me, man. That's all it was. When I looked down, there wasn't no other footprints around. Ain't nobody been there out on the ocean front yet. It's okay. So, belief system is something else that's found on page 43. It's more to me than just believing in God or a higher power. I better be checking out what my belief system is. You got to have a whole system, and what that is to me is God, fellowship, program, people in fellowship, prayer, spiritual principles. I believe in all this stuff. I believe in staying away from old people, places, and things. That's part of my belief system. I believe if I keep going around them, I'm going to get what I always got. I believe that, so that's part of my belief system. So once again, the message, this guy from Philadelphia told me to share that. I said, Kenny, man, I'm getting ready to share what I tell him. He said, yeah, well, Bill, just tell him that the program works and don't use. I said, okay. So I had to say that. One guy told me to hike up my pants and act like I was pimping. I'm not hiking up no pants. Can't do it, Charlie. So if you're new around here, give yourself a break. Just keep coming. Even if you don't think this program will work for you, just give yourself a break. Try it. In Cincinnati, and I'm quite sure they say it other places, try this for 90 days. Go to a meeting a day for 90 days. If at the end of those 90 days you are not completely satisfied, your misery will be gladly refunded. Try it. Stop going to meetings yet, man. This is 13 years later, and I still go to meetings. I don't be in meetings talking about that was a bad meeting. Some people ask, was the meeting any good? Didn't nobody use it. It was excellent. Now, whatever else went on was supposed to go on. What I got to get with is how I respond and accept and perceive what went on. So the message, once again, is that an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs. Because some places I go, they leave out the word drugs. But in the literature, it says an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use. And I think that's implying the drugs, right? And find a new way to live. That's what the message of Narcotics Anonymous is about. Once again, thank you, ISNAC, for giving me this opportunity. Thank y'all for sitting here listening to me, because I was scared as hell. And I just wanted to get through this, and I hope I got a message out to somebody. And everybody keep coming back.